Hey guys, it's me Iceberg, and today I'm checking out the CCA Phoenix, a single dynamic driver IEMs with the LCP diaphragm, for around $30 that you can get on AliExpress, or just $24 on the official site. Anyway, these are metal shells available in the mirror silver, like I have, then purple and black variations, and comes with a 3.5mm or Type-C cable, either with or without a mic. And it's pretty cool in the ultra budget segment. Well, without further ado, let's get into it. Well, as you can see, the Phoenix comes in a black box with the logo and this Firebird on the front. And on the back we can see the specs with the 33 impedance and 108 sensitivity, so you don't need extra amplifier to drive these. Anyway, inside the box we find a rounded metal shell with the CCI logo and a large vent next to it. And inside there is a black nozzle that's quite long and about 5.8mm wide, so be careful if you have narrow ear canals. Next we get a 2-pin 3.5 cable with the mic and volume control in my case, with the clear color indicators and the metal fittings, which is pretty good for its price, but don't expect anything outstanding, like in more expensive cables. The next thing we get is 3 pairs of standard silicone ear tips, a CCA pouch with a magnetic clasp, and the typical manual with a holographic Firebird. Okay, speaking briefly about the shape and fit, these shells have a rounded, streamlined shape with a proper nozzle angle, but they're on the heavier side, around 10 grams each, so keep that in mind. But despite that, they sit quite securely and snugly in my ears. Of course they create a sense of presence inside because of their weight, but that doesn't bother me at all. And thanks to their slim design, they don't stick out, which compensates all their flaws. And I would say that their shape will be fine for everyone, except for the people with the ultra small ears or ear canals, because in that case you'll feel some discomfort. And due to the large vent on the fast plates, these shells have even though well ventilated, but provide a poor isolations, so using them in a noisy environment seems like a major challenge. Okay, moving on to the sound, CCI describes this model as Harman target tuning, with a natural and balanced sound for human ears, you know, and all this stuff. And it actually would be boring if they just copied the Harman curve and put it into their model, because we have a tons of Harman target IEMs, right? So in that case, the CCI guys made a few key differences from the typical Harman curve. And the first thing is a slightly lowered sub-bass shelf, so this won't be sound super deep like you would expect. And then they raised the mid-bass and lower mids a bit, which I do appreciate of course, because it definitely adds more weight to the male vocals. And then we have a precise match with the Harman in the upper mid-range, which for me is a sweet spot, so vocals and instruments won't sound too shrill or, on the contrary, distant. And in the treble region we can see a fairly matching lower treble, followed by a deep at 11 kHz, which muffled the air and spaciousness, and then a weird spike at the 15 kHz, which made add some unwanted sibilance, but if you're old enough, you probably won't hear it. I'm just kidding. So in reality this sounds quite open, airy and spacious. Definitely not like a typical Harman model, but more on the brighter side for me, and my very first impression with the Phoenix was really loud, literally loud, because I just plugged them into my 4CK7 and almost went deaf. So then I plugged them directly into my PC and yeah, they were loud enough, but not too aggressive. So you guys for sure don't need amplifier to run these. Okay, with the Phoenix I wanted to pick something insanely fast, so I went with the Want You Bad by the Offspring, and it was a pretty enjoyable listening experience. At the start, the electric guitar sounded really energetic, and when Dexter's vocals kicked in, they were, you know, pretty sharp, though I would prefer a bit more weight in the lower register of his voice. However, it's important to note a very engaging stage, where Phoenix keeps up with the beat and nothing gets messy, so this BPM isn't a problem for them at all. And the next track isn't as fast, This is How You Remind Me by the Nickelback to test the vocals and instrumental backing. and I wanted to say the vocals here sounded quite natural, with a bit of hoarseness, though they're a bit on the brighter side, but the instruments really hit on the multiple layers, sometimes farther away, sometimes closer, creating a sense of the space, depth, and with the precise positioning, so we can hear the guitar on the upper right side and the drum hits from the lower left, and this is, I gotta say, is just mesmerizing. Okay, rock and metal sound amazing with these, and I really enjoyed listening to the Caesar, System of a Down, Papa Roach, Linkin Park, or even the New Hollywood Undead and Arctic Monkeys, and the others. But to switch the vibe, next I turned on something lighter and calmer, like Me and My Broken Heart by the Rickson, and you know, right at the start of this track, I realized that the Phoenix definitely has some kinda limiter on the upper treble, because it clearly lacks of the extension to make the high vocals notes soar, and yeah, the vocals go really high, but they hit a ceiling, so it feels more restrained. And also I noticed the same limitation in the bass, so the drums hits pretty hard with the dense texture here, but that hit doesn't go very deep, and because of that, the whole soundstage feels most flat. However, once again, I especially appreciate the placements of the elements of the soundstage here, while the vocal scenes of the center and closer, while the instruments constantly move along the edges of the stage, playing with their harmonics. So talking purely about the sound in detail, the bass here is not the main focus. I mean, it's more on the weakest side than the usual Harman, adding a little drive and depth to make the soundstage feel spacious, and yeah, it does a pretty job with that. But you know, if you listen to something purely basshead with these, like EDM, hard rock, dubstep, and like that, you won't get the punch and weight you're expecting. So consider the Phoenix like a neat and fast bass player, rather than a basshead monster. Moving to the mid-range, it takes up the sweet spot in the center of the soundstage, delivering a natural and harmonious sound. The male vocals here sound pretty full-bodied and wagey, but can be a bit thin in some cases, while the female vocals are super smooth and light with the right timbre, but also a bit thin and can be a bit sharp in the high notes, because they're on the brighter side. So the treble here is one of the main elements shaping the sound, and it does this beautifully without any excessive brightness in the ultra highs. And the only minor issue is the lack of airiness and expressiveness. But hey, this is the $30 single DD IEMs, so that's a trade-off for a brighter treble. And yeah, that's emphasized lower treble, and the spike at 15k Hz creates a complete picture of the high end, so cymbals, hi-hats and high harmonics of vocals sounds quite detailed and transparent. But on the few tracks this could be too much, potentially leading to sibilance or unpleasant harshness. However, this can be easily equalized or simply fixed by using narrowbore tips. And finally, getting to the stage, this is probably the most amazing thing about this set, not for its size, but because of the placements of the elements within the sound space. But first, talking about the stage size, it's quite deep and tall, but not so wide space that feels like a high sphere, while the vocals take the leading position, then the instruments are arranged around the periphery of the stage and spread out across the entire height, and the bass filled up the space, giving the stage more volume and depth. And the most impressive things here is how well the Phoenix handles intense moments without turning everything into the mess or incoherence. With this, I listened to the craziest fast tracks with a high BPM and could discern each element from the others, even though the rather narrow soundstage didn't allow me to focus on that. But still, in terms of the soundstage placement, this is the one of the most impressive set in the ultra budget segment, and I can clearly recommend these for intense gaming, where you need to understand the positioning of the sound in the space. Okay, in conclusion, the CCA Phoenix is an entry-level IEM for just $30 that offers everything you need to get started in the hi-fi world. Firstly, we get a metal shells, which are durable and feature a rounded shape that's quite versatile, making them great for all ears. And speaking of their tuning, I initially thought that we would get another set of the Harman tuned IEMs like many others on the market, but that's not the case, because CCA added a few unique features in here. Sure, this is not the most extended model, and it has a limiter in the ultra low and ultra high ranges, but within their range, the Phoenix delivers a pretty coherent, open, lively and energetic sound that leans toward the brighter side, like the single EW200, but this treble sounds beautiful with the sparkle and shimmer, and can go beyond his limits on some tracks. But the most impressive thing is definitely the technicality, which remains clear and understandable even in the most intense moments, like when I listen to the Offsprings or Sum 41. So all in all, my final rating is a 7.5 out of 10 considering the price, and I can recommend these to anyone who is just getting started to the hi-fi world, where you can immediately get a sense of technicality and a bright vibe. And of course I would recommend them to the treble heads, because this model is designed to deliver detailed and beautiful highs. Also for fans of heavy genres like metal or rock, this can be a pretty good budget choice, and for gamers as well, if you need precise separation and positioning in the space. However, be careful if you have a narrow ear canal or if you're sensitive to the treble, in which case this might be not your choice. Many thanks to the CCA for providing the sample for this review, and I'll leave the purchase link in the description below the video, so be sure to check them out and grab the Phoenix or others at a nice price. Also would appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe to support my channel. This was Iceberg, take care, and I'll see you the next one, bye!